Kobe Manzo. This is episode 188. That's pretty ridiculous. 200 is a daunting number. We are slowly approaching. What we are also approaching is national championship season. We have the quarterfinal round for two levels of football this week in D2 and the NAIA, the round of 16 at the D3 level. So what that means is a lot of really good football for you. It doesn't matter what level of football you're into. So tonight I've got two great guests that join me. First up is Idris, he's the running back from Slippery Rock University. He was at Notre Dame College for 3 years before the Falcons. They shut down the school. Slippery Rock picked him up. He was first team all PSAC West selection this year. He's having a hell of a year down there with the Rock. He joins me to talk about their playoff run, big time victory over Cal PA this week, and then going up to play Ferris in Big Rapids this weekend. Up next later on, we got Rahshan La Mons, the running back from Susquehanna, and a freshman running back coming in, being the starter, and breaking the single-season rushing record for a Susquehanna team that has one of the most explosive offenses in the country. So very excited to talk to those two guys. Jimmy Martin is back on the pod with me tonight to talk D3 football. I got all your D2 and NAI football covered tonight. So highlights, all the best stuff that you need to know about small school football on tonight's episode. Thank you for tuning in. The one thing you can do for us, tell a friend. Don't buy nothing. Don't subscribe to nothing. Tell a friend about the show. I'd be eternally grateful. Thank you very much for tuning in. Watch the episode on YouTube if you are. Don't forget, bottom of the screen, those video chapters, or in the description, fast forward to the part of the video you want to watch and then get the hell out of here, or hear me out. Stick around for the whole thing. Or just maybe, throw it on the TV, throw it on the computer, just let it play. You know what I mean? Maybe let's do a little bit of that. Otherwise, those video chapters are also in the description on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to. Follow us on the Twitter, socials, Instagram, wherever you consume content, we are there. So thank you very much for tuning in. Really excited to get into this episode. Joining the show tonight, balled out at Notre Dame College for 3 years. We knew some team was going to get a dude when this guy found a new home. The Falcons, they shut the school down. Slippery Rock calls. He picks up the phone. Running the Rock for the Rock. It's Idris Lawrence. What's going on, bro?
Nothing much. Doing good, man. How are you?
Dude, excited to get you on here. You've been a story that we've followed, throughout the last couple of seasons. But obviously this year, this has been the big part of it, man. What have you brought to this team in 2024? And talk about what they've brought to you. It feels like this is a pretty good match and one of those situations where both parties are certainly seeing the benefits of it.
Oh, yeah, man. Things have been going great over here at the Rock. Well, it all started like back in the spring. I had a good feeling about the program when I visited back in the spring, and just since then, my feeling is just has been so surreal. It's all everything I've dreamed of, everything I've imagined, like in a college experience. I've gotten it here at the Rock. It's like it's a real family here.
I like that a lot. And I kind of brought it up before we got going, but obviously the unfortunate news and Notre Dame College shuts down, and it sounds like you still keep up with a lot of those guys that you're playing with over there on the Falcons.
I do actually. I actually have a friend that's at Valdosta State, and we connected this past weekend. So they're also playing as well. So that'd be really cool if we could, get this win and hopefully see them following.
That'd be a pretty cool reunion of sorts at I would say a pretty cool spot in the Natty would be a pretty neat ordeal. But outside of that, how about sharing the backfield with Chris? That's a piece I wanted to talk to you about. Coming in, you've obviously got a guy in him. He's become a staple of that offense. Obviously a talented guy. What makes the two of you one of the best backfields in D2 football, which I'm sure is something that's said around there in that building?
I would say really it's the iron sharpens iron, man. Like Chris, he's a great back. I feel like if he could go anywhere, he would start the PSAC, if not other D2s in the nation. And I feel about them the same way about myself. We just come ready to work every day and we push each other. So I feel like iron sharpens iron when it comes with me and Chris.
I like that, dude. And that's how it should be, right? Now, sometimes it doesn't work out like that, and, egos or other things get in the way, and sometimes an offense struggles to feed both of these guys, right? You guys seemingly have been able to do that. How has that balance come along, and what are your interactions like with him on and off the field?
Yeah, it's been great, man. Like, I feel like we just have a good connection. Like, we want each other to do good. Like, when he's on the field, I'm praying that he makes a big run or he pops a play, and then it's vice versa when I'm on the field. And I feel like it gives a lot of credit to my running back coach, Malcolm Henry. He's instilled that like since day one when I brought me in. He said, we're both two good backs, and he's gonna treat us good. It's been a great way. I would say the biggest thing with me is like we're in like week 15, bro. It's a
Yeah.
long season. So like it's manageable. So you have to like at Notre Dame I was getting a lot of carries, so like coming around and realizing like I'm at Slippery Rock, so I might, we're gonna be playing in the playoffs. So I can't get that the amount of carries that I might want for my body and longevity for the longer course of the season. So I feel like they just did a good thing with that, with balancing out the carries. And now my body feels great. It's the best I ever felt. It's my senior year. And, we're winning. So that's all I could really ask for.
Agreed there 100%. I think that's an underappreciated part of a tandem backfield like that. The obvious being that you have a fresh back to roll out there. Say you get a couple carries and you kind of lead the drive down the field. You got someone to come and punch it in from the red zone or vice versa, and you get fresh legs in there. But throughout the course of the season, those hits pile up, and you're talking about taking, it might just be 5 to 10 less carries a game in the grand scheme of things. That adds up, and your body certainly remembers every single one of those hits throughout the course of the season. Can certainly attest to that one, dude. But easier said than done, and then to do that with a couple really talented guys, and to make sure that everyone gets their touches right. Another thing easier said than done is making it this far in the playoffs. And you guys, you lost to Cal earlier in the year. What was so exciting about being able to play the Vulcans again?
Everything was exciting, man. Everything about we needed that win. The whole staff, from the coaches, from the players, everyone knew how bad we needed that one. Cal was a very good football team. They had a good team this year, but we knew as ourselves that we kind of beat ourselves that first game, and we just wanted the opportunity was there. We were so close. We just wanted to get the job done, which we did.
100%. And speaking kind of from your perspective too, that first matchup, 10 yards on the ground for you guys. That's across the board. As a team, 10 yards rushing. That is not a characteristic of this team that we have come to find be very consistent. This time around, you flipped the script and you did it in a very emphatic way. 245 yards on the ground. What changed outside of the fact that I'm sure you guys are trying to go improve a point and then some?
Yeah, like what you would say, us wanting to prove a point, but I feel like around that time, it was early. It was around week 7.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we kind of needed that loss. Like around that time, we didn't really know our identity.
Yeah.
So we took that loss. We had a bye week. We regrouped, and after that, I don't know. It was just after that week, like it was just a different feeling with the team. Like we all we needed that L. It made us stronger. We bonded together. But I don't really know how to describe it, bro. It's working out good, man.
Absolutely. It certainly has, seemingly worked out for you guys to be in the position you're in now, man. I wanted to talk about one of the guys you share the offensive backfield with, being Braden Long, the Harlan Hill finalist for multiple years, the only 2-time finalist in Slippery Rock history. That's ridiculous when you think about the tradition of this program and kind of the magnitude of it. But what has it been like joining a backfield with him, and how does he sustain that level of success, week in and week out?
It's been tremendous, bro. Like I said before, coming to the Rock is everything I've been asking for. Since my freshman year, I always wanted to play around the quarterback, like a real actual quarterback that knows everything about the offense. He's well oriented. He handles his business. He comes ready to work every day. That's everything with Braden Long. And I couldn't be even more blessed to have a player like him on the side for my senior season.
I love that, man. Those are true words. I like that. And to kind of close it off here, you guys going up to Ferris State. I'd argue there has not been a more important game throughout the course of the season, obviously, but strictly when it comes to the ground game, right? Being able to control the tempo, control offensively, that time possession, some of those other things against a really strong defensive front seven from that Ferris State Bulldog squad. What do you know about them, and how do you prepare going into a matchup like this, man?
Right. Obviously, I heard of me, being a senior, but I basically heard about Ferris State my whole college career.
Mm-hmm.
Them having success and being, championships and stuff. But Like we've been saying, like we've gotten to this moment, the final four teams. Like if at this point, bro, it's like it's talent's everywhere.
Yep.
Anybody, all these final four teams have talent. So it's just gonna come down to who's ready to play that game. And I feel like, me and my guys, we're ready.
100%, man. And this is a case, too, of like, you kind of mentioned it there with Ferris, but the same goes back to the Slippery Rock program. These teams are so familiar in these situations compared to so many other programs across the country. You look at the Final Four right now between Valdosta and Ferris, Mankato, you guys. All of these teams, these programs have been in these spots in somewhat recent history, and that is seemingly, in my opinion, going to be the recipe for some really competitive games. Is there kind of an underlying confidence, I would imagine, that building from a lot of those guys? Because, hey, just like Ferris, just like Valdosta, just like these other teams, we've been here before and we've experienced success.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like there's a confidence in our program, in our room, just like they've been there before, but like, I feel confident in my team, I feel confident in our guys. I think one of my coaches may have said something earlier in the week and said it was something like the best blood to bang it out with the best. And that's just what that's gonna be this upcoming weekend.
It's a good way to summarize it, my man. Well, it's been fun watching what you bring to this squad. Certainly to keep that going on Saturday. And then from there, who knows, man? It could have a lot of things go on Saturday. I'm excited to see the result. I'll definitely be tuned in, brother. Thanks for joining me tonight. That's all I got for you.
No problem, bro. Thanks for having me on.
It's time to talk some D2 football. This week gets a lot easier. The games are down to just 4. That doesn't mean they disappointed, though. The first one, the game that a lot of people were calling the pseudo-national championship, the defending national champions in Harding Bisons going up to Big Rapids, Michigan to take on Ferris State. This one was outrageous. The Bisons trying to get things going early. I think the biggest cliff note for me for this, their offense couldn't get it done on 4th down. Ferris State defense steps up. This guy right here, Trinidad Chambliss, had himself a day, proving why what he is one of the best players in all of Division II football right now. He's not alone, though. A lot of weapons on the outside there. Guys like Katzer, Rose, some other big-time pieces on the outside having great days for Ferris State. This is the 6th Super Region 3 championship in the last 8 seasons for the Bulldogs. And again, what a couple of plays from Trinidad throughout this one. Felt like he had command of that huddle and the scheme offensively. Ferris State knew exactly what they were doing. I think the depth on both sides of the ball for this Ferris State team is something that maybe isn't talked about nearly as much as it should be. When you look at these guys and what they've been able to do, even when you have certain players go down on the, I think, defensive and offensive line in particular with certain injuries, and you're able to bounce back and play against a team like Harding and win in this fashion against a team like Harding, there's not a lot of substitute for that at any level of football. Ferris State has been able to do that for a long time, been able to do it well. 20-0 at half. Ferris defense, they didn't give anything. And I think, again, that was the big difference for me. Harding, they get into these series and these possessions where they're getting 3-4 yards of play and they're chunking this yardage down the field. They got to do a lot of 4th and 2, 4th and 3, where usually this Bison's offense would be really comfortable. And Keelan and company over there, that's not the first time they've had to overcome some odds. Ferris did not give anything in those situations. There's a lot of stuffed attempts from that Ferris defense. And, it also helps your defense generates multiple turnovers. You held the Bisons to only 130 yards on the day, even with 45 carries. And if you watch the game, this close to a shutout victory. The final 41-7, the Bulldogs take it. And that touchdown from Harding did not come until the 4th quarter. And if I look at it here, it actually didn't come until about 6 minutes left in the game. So Ferris State very close to pitching a shutout against one of the best teams in Division II football. That says a lot about it. Ferris also didn't even punt until 2 minutes left in the game, and they were 6-6 in the red zone. So they won, it felt like, just about every category. This is an old-fashioned kind of ass-kicking, to be honest with you, and that's the last thing I would have expected out of this game. This was a game that was so one-sided. Watching it, Harding certainly had their moments. It's not like they didn't have any bright spots in this game, but you watch this, and it was just very one-sided. The momentum didn't have an ebb and flow that we've kind of come to expect in these type of playoff-type performances. It was all Bulldogs early and often. Chambliss finishes 18-27, 145, 2 touchdowns through the air, had 2 touchdowns on the ground as well, added 86 yards there. He had a pretty split-up receiving effort on the day, 7 different Bulldogs catching passes from Trinidad. Defensively for Ferris, had a couple guys come up with some big-time plays. Madison with the big interception, and then had a forced fumble with a fumble recovery from Victor Nelson, the big fella on the inside. We talked about him earlier on. He's been such a key piece for that interior D-line unit for this Ferris State team. A couple TFLs, and I think, they weren't making a ton of plays behind the line of scrimmage, Ferris, but you're talking about 1 and 2 yard gains against a Harding team that is usually anticipating 5 or 6 the way they run their offense. And they just kept them off schedule. I think the entire game, you keep a team like Harding off schedule, really hard for the Bisons to come back into this one. They actually threw the ball 7 times, Harding did. I think that was kind of an indicator of them potentially getting a little desperate at some of those points. Keelan was throwing the ball around quite a bit by their standards. I know 7 pass attempts is not anything ridiculous in the grand scheme of things, but Ferris State just getting it done in all aspects. Didn't exactly dominate time possession. They were able to score pretty effectively when they got the ball. 8 of 13 on 3rd down, 3 of 4 on 4th down, and like I talked about earlier, 6 of 6 in the red zone, coming away with points for the Bulldogs. And just one of the most dominant playoff performances I have seen in my short period of watching D2 football. And this Ferris State team, look at how far they've come since week 0. A loss against Pittsburgh State. They lose their starting quarterback for the year in Carson Golker, a guy that we thought was potentially a pivotal point of this Ferris State team. Not to say that I counted them out after they lost their quarterback. I knew this team was a lot deeper than just that, but who knew that Trinidad would grow into this quarterback that we're seeing now, and that this Ferris State team would grow around him in the coming weeks? And it's been really impressive to watch. And now you think about their matchup this week hosting Slippery Rock. I'd be lying if I didn't say I was probably going to take Ferris in that one, but I'm very curious to see if Ferris can continue to build on this momentum. It's really easy to get up for that Harding game against the defending national champions, the team that everyone's talking about. This is the D2 national championship for the regional final, this and that. And I'm sure it'll be easy to get up from the national semifinal as well, but let's see if they bring that same energy and come out with that same passion against a Slippery Rock team that is obviously a little bit more multi-dimensional than that Harding attack, with a defense that certainly isn't nothing to scoff at either. But again, the cliff notes from this one, Ferris State is just a dominant force in D2 football right now, and they seem to be on track for another national championship appearance, but they got to take care of business this weekend. Another team with seemingly some really good trajectory. I mean, all of these squads really do, but talk about Valdosta State. The Blazers absolutely coming undone offensively in the best way possible against the Virginia Union defense that we thought might give them fits. To be honest with you, it was 2 pieces for me. That Virginia Union rushing attack. How are they going to be limited by this Blazers run defense? We found out they actually did a pretty good job of that. Then the offense, undone in the fact that they were across the field, spreading the ball out, just absolutely making the defensive front for the Panthers go all over the place. And this one finishes 49-14. We've had a couple quarterfinal games, regional finals, that have not been very competitive. This is the 7th trip to the semifinals in program history for this Valdosta team. And I talked about that run defense. That was the question mark for me heading into it. They answered it. 2 big fumble recoveries in the second quarter. They held VUU to 139 on the ground. That's not usual for the Panthers. And those 2 fumble recoveries came out of the hands of Jada Byers, the running back over there for the Panthers. That has been sensational throughout the course of this year. Valdosta State, man, they did not care. They did a lot of things really well offensively. It starts right there with the guy with the ball in his hand, Sammy Edwards, dishing out and getting the ball to his playmakers on the outside. But there were so many other unsung heroes here for this Blazers attack. The one that certainly got his flowers being Rodney Bullard, 5 catches, 158 yards, 3 touchdowns for the wide receiver there. He was a big-time reason that offense got going early on. Edwards finishes 13 of 19, 302, and 4 touchdowns through the air. So maybe not the most attempts in the book, but he certainly got it done when he was throwing the ball, which is a pretty good stat line right there, if I do say. On the Virginia Union side, again, Jada Byers being held to 109 yards on 22 carries might not sound like an incredible defensive day, but when you know about what he and that offense have been able to do, you know exactly what kind of accomplishment that is for this Valdosta State defense. And a really spread out effort. There wasn't necessarily 1 or 2 guys that led the charge for this Valdosta State team. Jaquan Hicks had one of those forced fumbles. Larry Elder forced 2 fumbles on the day as well. The recoveries coming from Monte Boyd and Sterling Roberts, some guys that kind of jump out right there. Otherwise, a really spread out defensive effort from this Valdosta State team. And that's it. Valdosta State proving time and time again why they retained the 1 seed, by the way, heading into the semifinals, so they'll host Minnesota State Mankato. And that was another kind of exclamation point on what's been an incredible season for this Valdosta State team. And this was a game, too, that had some interesting pieces to it in the fact that Virginia Union and Valdosta State played not too recently, just a couple years ago, and for a lot of the guys on this Valdosta State team, that wasn't a game that they even played in, and for some of them, maybe there was kind of that talk, but head coach Tremaine Jackson was asked about that in the postgame, and I just wanted to tune in and let you guys hear what he had to say about getting some quote-unquote revenge against the Panthers.
It feels good to be able to thrive and advance in this tournament, but make no mistake about it, deep down on the left side of my body, I did remember what happened 2 years ago. When you're at a place like Valdosta State, you remember every loss because we don't lose much. But I was really proud of these guys and how they attacked the week, not trying to beat Virginia Union because of something 2 years ago, but beating Virginia Union because of where we want to go right now. Just because you were don't mean you are. We talk about that a lot. And so our guys really, we're not that team from 2 years ago. We continue to say that. And these guys, I think they displayed that today.
That was pretty good stuff right there. Just because you were does not mean that you are. There were some other, really good kind of clippable quotes in that from Coach Jack, and he's a guy that's obviously inspired this team and been at the focal point of, first, some criticism when they missed the playoffs and kind of have a really down year in terms of Valdosta State and their tradition and history. They turned that around very quickly. He's back in a very prominent spot with this Valdosta State team. I really like those words from him in the postgame right there. I make sure to try and listen to those when I get the chance. Their opponent, the 4-seed Minnesota State Mankato, took on NSIC foe Bemidji State at home. The Mavs come out of it 27-23. Minnesota State is moving on. This is the 5th time in program history the Mavs are in the semifinals. I keep saying all that because I hope you guys realize these are not any new teams to this level of the playoffs. Mankato, Valdosta, Ferris, even Slippery Rock, we'll talk about in a minute. These are all teams that have been in these positions and have a lot of experience playing playoff football, have a lot of guys on current rosters that have played in some really meaningful football games. So I expect the national semifinals and championship to be a really competitive type of atmosphere. Hopefully that does not let me down. But talking about this game with the Mavericks, Bemidji, they scored on the opening drive. It was like, here we go. Another NSIC, just gritty back and forth slugfest type of game, Last time these two teams met in the regular season came down to a game-winning kick off the foot of Matthew Jager, who we had on the show just a couple weeks ago. But the play of the game was certainly later, and I'll pull up a couple of the clips here, courtesy of Charlie Yeager on Twitter. I appreciate you, man. Pull up a couple of the clips as we watch through his lens, at least portions of this one. And like I said earlier on, this was a really back and forth type of game here as we get going. Minnesota State offensively maybe struggled a little bit early on, but they coughed the ball up, turned it over to the Beavers, and that's where things really got going for this Bemidji State attack. They capitalize. You see here, field goal on the other end. Knocks it through. Bemidji State kind of adding on to that lead there were the Beavers. Bemidji State, that opening field goal wasn't enough to keep them going. They wanted a touchdown on top of it. That's 10-0. Drayton Lamont from Sam McGath, and that's 10-0 Beavers. Mavericks on the ensuing possession, punching it through the goal line. That's Sam Backer. Extra points good. That's 10-7. Mankato fighting back into it. Bemidji responds almost right away. Within 2 minutes, Connor Carver, who had himself a day running the ball under center for Bemidji State, he gets his first on the day from 10 yards out, 17-7 Beavers. But before halftime, Mankato responds a touchdown of their own. This time, Hayden Eckern does it himself from 12 yards out. It was 17-14 Beavers at the half. Here's Carver again. This time, though, he's not in the red zone. 77 yards down the sideline. He takes it all the way to the house, finds pay dirt for this Bemidji State offense, and they were rolling yet again. Again, what a day for him under center. Mavericks respond. Trayshawn Watson on the outside. That was a beautiful ball, even more beautiful catch. Not to be outdone, Bemidji State trying to score. This was the play of the game right here, man. The forced fumble on the 3-yard line returned over 80 yards the other way in the fourth quarter. It does not get any bigger than that, folks. Minnesota State able to capitalize on the ensuing offensive possession. They score there to go up 27-23 with 11 minutes to go in the ballgame. It all comes down to this: Bemidji State trying to put one score in to take the lead on fourth down. It's batted away at the goal line. Mankato holds on 27-23 at home. He's looking for pass interference. He's not going to get it. Mankato holds on, and that was a pretty incredible game to witness with my own eyes. And like I talked about it earlier, that fumble recovery right there, that was the play of the game. 23-21, they're trying to make it a two-score game on the 3-yard line. Instead, 80 yards the other way. That ends up being the game-winning score there. And it was really that last play, kind of a lackluster concept, I thought, personally, from that Beavers offense on fourth down. Just didn't seem like they had much going on. Some people were trying to call for that pass interference call. I just didn't see it to me. I saw a wide receiver run into a defender that was already in that space. It certainly didn't go run and initiate that contact. The defender didn't. And it's just kind of you're not going to get a call like that in that situation with kind of those things on the line, I don't think, in that situation. But shout out to the Mavericks, man. What a great performance against a solid Bemidji team, a team where you knew this was going to be close. The Beavers wanted revenge in this one at home, be able to get the job done. Now they got to go on the road to Valdosta State. We'll see if they can keep that momentum going. Finally, though, let's talk about Slippery Rock. They take on California, PA. This game, another very intriguing one because the Vulcans took down Slippery Rock in the regular season. So again, kind of a revenge type deal. The biggest cliff note, and we talked about it earlier, 10 yards in the regular season. That's what Slippery Rock had on the ground against this Vulcans defensive front this time around. 245 yards rushing. That certainly feels like a bit of a switch up. Let's take a look at a couple of the clips here as we get going. Slippery Rock offensively, they did not turn the ball over once. They started the game up 21-0. Did not look back at any point. It was a pretty wire-to-wire victory for the Slippery Rock team. You got a two-time Harlan Hill finalist right there in Braden Long, absolutely dealing to the outside. He's the first two-time finalist for the Harlan Hill Trophy in Slippery Rock history. The defense, as you can see, comes up with some pretty big stops at a couple points along the way. One of them up for the Gene Upshaw Award for the best lineman in D2 football. This one finishes 31-13. Slippery Rock takes it on the day. Cal PA had a couple scores late, but really not enough to really challenge this Slippery Rock team at any point. Like I talked about, is a pretty wire-to-wire type victory for the Rock. Now, going on the day, we talked with Lawrence earlier, 162 yards, and he was a big-time playmaker for them. 23 carries. Braden Long, 17-21, 154 through the air, and 3 touchdowns. A lot of things to be really excited about. Davis Black, the quarterback for Cal PA, who's been having himself an incredible season. They limited him to 90 yards through the air and 1 touchdown on 23 attempts. It's not like he threw the ball 6 times. Really, kudos goes out to that Slippery Rock defensive secondary. Now, they got a lot done on the ground, but it just wasn't enough to finish in the red zone. Kind of felt like the moral of the story here for this Vulcan squad. You look at it, Slippery Rock had a little bit of the edge in time of possession, 7-12 on third down. And when it came to total offense, 400 yards to 278 from Cal PA. So outgained them in that respect. Otherwise, I don't know, not too much jumps out about this one. Like I said, it was kind of a wire-to-wire type victory. Logan Ramper led the charge offensively, him and Mike Solomon with 73 yards apiece, 3 touchdowns between the two of them offensively on the outside, the wide receivers there. And on defense, it was Andrew Vince with 10 tackles and a sack for the Rock, along with Todd Hill, 2 sacks, forced fumble, and a recovery there. 2 breakups from Josh Stokes in that defensive secondary. So a lot of playmakers across the board defensively for the Rock. The biggest test now comes against Ferris State, but that's not the end of kind of the accolades and kind of the achievements and milestones for this team. Braden Long talked about how he's the first 2-time finalist for the Harlan Hill Trophy in Slippery Rock history. He's also the first quarterback in SRU history with 2 3,000-yard seasons. He became the 4th quarterback in program history to top 7,000 career passing yards. Really incredible stuff. He's having not only an incredible year, but an incredible career down there at Slippery Rock. He's looking to put a cap and a bow on it, so to speak, against Ferris State this weekend. But alas, here are the final 4 teams left standing in Division II football. You've got the 1 seed Valdosta State taking on and playing host to Minnesota State Mankato, followed by the 2 seed Ferris State taking on number 3 Slippery Rock. The teams get reseeded after the regional finals, which is why you've got the 1 through 4 right there. So the games will take place down in Georgia and up in Michigan and Titletown and Big Rapids, respectively. Man, this is really it, guys. We went from covering like 16 to 8 games, and now there's only 4 games. Next week, there'll only be 2, and the week after, there would just be 1. It'll be down in McKinney ISD. Let us know down below who's got your pick to make it to the national championship. Really excited to hear what you guys think of this. D2 football has been an absolute blast to cover this year, and we're not done yet. So let's get over to the next guest conversation and keep things rolling this episode. Also joining the show tonight, the new single-season rushing leader at Susquehanna. Big reason for that Riverhawks offensive success. It's freshman Rahshan La Mons. What?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Hey, a lot of people wouldn't have. I imagine you did. We'll talk about that confidence level coming in, being able to do that in year 1, dude.
Oh man, I don't even know where to start. Like, it was coming in. I mean, of course, as a freshman, I was just trying to find my way on the field. Like, I told my parents, I was like, we have it like at Susquehanna, we had a 1,000-yard back, so it wasn't like I was coming in like, oh my God, I already know I got the starting job. So I was like, I just hope I get on special teams and I'm able to do something just to say I'm on the field. And then Coach Juan and Coach Perk, they continue to be like, all right, Rahshan, we're gonna put you here. We're gonna put you here. And we happened to be successful throughout those. And then the first game came up and everybody was like, yeah, Rahshan, you're starting. And I'm like, damn, like I'm starting. Like, that's one way to just tell me the day before the game. But like, nobody lost confidence in me. Everybody on the team was just like, yeah, like we wouldn't want it any other way. So they really built the confidence in me to go out there and do what I do. Because coming in, I was just like, man, I just hope I could see kickoff or something.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious about too, because, you know, sometimes in those conversations coming in, if you've got a guy in the recruiting process that you think is going to be potentially a dude like that and they make an impact right away, usually that's up front. Like, hey, come here. You're going to be the guy. You're going to be, you know, this many. Some coaches go out of their way to make some crazy promises. I mean, you and I both know that, but it doesn't sound like that was at all kind of the case throughout the recruiting process with you.
Nah, Coach Perk, they told me, they was like, I mean, like, of course, you're our guy. Like, I mean, they wouldn't be recruiting me if I wasn't, but they didn't promise me anything coming here. They just promised me that I would be in a successful program and I would have to work my way up and do what I need to do to be where I want to be. So they told me, I mean, it's up to me on what I do this season. So
That's the way it should be, right? You buy into a program, but a coach and a coaching staff typically is kind of how that works, right? And that's what we found kind of across all college athletics. But you came into the year, you wasted no time, dude. 2 tuds in the first game, and you've had an incredible year, obviously. Talk about the coming on the scene moment there, if you will, and it wasn't no tush push into the end zone, right? You had to work for that one. Maybe you needed a little oxygen after it, but talk about coming out of the scene there in week 1 and how you've just continued that upward trajectory throughout the course of 24 season, man.
Well, it's crazy because the play that I scored on, that was like the first time a screenplay has worked in Susquehanna for a minute. So Coach Perk, I was the happiest he's ever been. But like, I was just like, all week in practice, they was like, they don't know what to expect coming from you. And then we kept repping it, and we perfected it. So at that time when it was going in the game, it just felt natural. Like, nothing felt like I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Everything was just like boom, boom, boom on the dot. And then from that moment on, it was just like, once I got the first feeling of it and I realized like, it's just another football game and I'm supposed to be here. From then it was just up. There was nothing that could bring me down, because it was like, well, I'm supposed to be here, and everybody that I'm on the field with believes that too. So
that's a real feeling, and sometimes, like you said, other people realize that before you do, and it's a funny thing to watch, and then things like that happen, and you see the belief kind of, you know, and sometimes it's fueled by your coaches and your teammates, but then eventually, you know, it makes your way to yourself, which is the most powerful part of it, man. But, you know, speaking of that, 3 touchdowns against a quality opponent this weekend in St. John's, and you guys go on the road. Nobody, and I mean nobody, not us either, all right, I'm throwing myself under the bus there, was picking you guys to come out of there with a win, right? There's not too many people that pick D3 football games, but from what I saw, nobody was even giving you guys a chance. This one wasn't going to be competitive. St. John's probably by a couple scores, and you go in there, you pick up a statement win, 3 touchdowns, statement dub. What does that feel like?
I mean, it feels great, because, I mean, of course, being in a college atmosphere like that was definitely a different feeling from what we've witnessed here. and then even just the games that we've been to, like the away games and all of that. So that atmosphere was just ridiculous to play in. Like, and I tell everybody, I was like, that probably was the funnest game that I've ever played in, just because how competitive it was and how driven we were to win. Like coming in, Coach Perk was like you said, nobody picked us to win, but he was like, if all 58 people in this room believe that we're gonna win, then we're gonna win. And we went out there and then we won, and it was just like, I mean, like, of course we were excited because of the way we won, but it was almost like we expected it because we know how much we put into that game to win. So like with the outcome,
100%.
the outcome handled itself.
Yeah, it definitely did. And it wasn't like that from the jump, though. 10-0 deficit early on. I mean, there's no flinch in this team, huh?
Nah, I mean, we know, I feel like we have the most explosive offense in the country. So I feel like we can score whenever we want. And kind of like on and off the field as like an offense, we knew when we looked at the score and said it was 10-0, we realized like those couple plays that we could have capitalized on, we shot ourselves in the foot. And then once we got that in our heads, it was like, all right, we got to lock in. It was just up from there. And then it was Coach Perk and Coach Juan continued to call the right plays, and then we just continued to make the right plays.
That is, that's saying it pretty mildly, dude, but you're 100% correct. And then, obviously comes down to it. Talk about it, man. Dominic knocks through the game winner. Talk about that moment for you guys on the road again and kind of that hostile environment and coming out and I don't want to say sneaking away with it, but really earning it right at the end there. Talk about that moment. Walk me through it.
To be honest, that's probably, I've never been in that situation, and
Okay.
I've never even been in that type of crowd to where like it almost felt like the stadium was rocking. Like it was like Lord Jesus, like if he make this kick, like it's gonna go, like he's just gonna take the air out of him. And watching, like it was crazy because we were sitting on the bench and I'm sitting with one of my teammates, and I just looked at him and I was like, Dom missed every kick in pregame from the right hash. And they were like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, he came up to me and told me that he missed every kick from the right hash. And he was like, okay, well, now we just gotta pray. We just gotta what I like everything went the way that it was supposed to go. Like from PJ snapping the ball to Tommy holding the ball.
Yeah.
And Dom, somebody where Dom will go and he'll be in his head the whole game. And then when you need him most, you'd be like, all right, he's been in his head all game. Like, what's he gonna do? And he'll show up. And as you've seen, he definitely showed up when we needed him to.
Dude, that is something else, man. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you talk about that moment. Like, even when, maybe on the outside, someone just doesn't seem like they got it that day. Like, to be able to lock in for that one snap, that one play, and be able to get it done, dude, is big time. You guys, you got an all-time record of 1-0 against the Johnnies. Not many teams in the country say they have a 1,000% winning percentage against St. John's over there, dude.
Yeah.
That must feel pretty nice for sure. But
definitely a great feeling.
Yeah, I believe it, man. But road doesn't get any easier from here on out. Talk about the challenge going on ahead for you guys this weekend. But that challenge will be at home, which has got to be a big piece of that, correct?
Yes. So that's going to be, of course, winter break, everybody gets to go home. But, I mean, as we've seen, whether we have 30 fans or whether we have 10,000 fans, this team doesn't change. We bring our own energy, and we going to play football no matter what.
Damn. Some good stuff right there, dude. That's really good stuff. And you killed it, man. I'm excited to tune into you guys. The explosiveness on offense, I can certainly attest to watching you guys throughout the entire course of the year, right? Even you've done it against really good defenses, too. I look back to that Brockport game earlier on in the year, right, against one of the best defenses in the region. You guys are able to put up some points, and you go right back and give Cortland one of the best games, of the regular season. And some of these games, you continue to kind of one-up yourself. This team continues to build. But that's all I got for you tonight, man. I really appreciate you taking some time with me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your night, dude.
All right, you too.
Time to talk some D3 football. And to start things off, Jimmy, I think this might be our pick. This is probably the best game of the week, and one that I don't think literally anyone picked the result correctly.
No, I know. I didn't. I did pick Susquehanna to cover, though, if you remember.
There you go.
Plus
Yes,
13.
you did.
So, but I did pick St. John, so I can't totally playing favorites here. But Rahshan La Mons had an absolute beauty of a game. The freshman, 231 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns for the kid. I know we had just had on the show, but wow, what a performance from him, Kobe.
Dude, absolutely ridiculous. And it wasn't just him. This offense, he talks about it in the episode, and he says this is the most explosive offense in D3 football, and it's certainly kind of, he's got a claim to that, right? The way these guys have played in a really tough environment against a really solid defensive opponent in St. John's, and for him to come in and have the impact that he's had, dude, it has been sensational, what he's been able to do for this offense.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely absurd, especially at his age, like you said. But you know, the other side as well, you know, our boy Severson with 466 and 5 touchdowns, and Riley Schwellenbach with 167 and 2 touchdowns receiving. So with a lot of explosive offense on the other side as well. But obviously Susquehanna coming out on top.
Yes, they did. And a big note from that one, Jimmy, being the fact that La Mons, he became Susquehanna's single-season rushing leader with 1,453. That is a ridiculous number. And you talk about a guy coming in as a first-year guy, as a freshman in this program, and taking on that responsibility from week 1 when he scored 2 touchdowns in their opener and really just growing in his role from there. It was absolutely fantastic hearing from him and seeing what they've been able to do. And, you know, for the first time this year, Susquehanna did not initiate the scoring. Instead, they had to bounce back. A 10-0 deficit on the road at St. John's is not something many teams can pull off. Susquehanna able to do that. And finally, of course, the walk-off kick. Dude, I'm sure you saw this video of this one.
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
This video courtesy of D3Football.com. Thank you for sharing this on Twitter. Dominic Bourgeois, I believe is the correct pronunciation here. He knocks this one through and gives Susquehanna the victory on the road. And Rahshan said you could just feel the air leave this place, dude. And I certainly believe it. You watch the scene here, the celebration from the Riverhawks. There he is after nailing it. Running around, probably doesn't even know what to do. And these guys get out on the field. Absolutely a ridiculous scene up there in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's awesome. Going on the road, getting a big win in the playoffs. You can't beat that.
No, that's pretty cool stuff right there. But Susquehanna, they keep the dream alive. They'll move on to the next round, and they've played some really good football this year. But another big time matchup, Bethel at Wartburg. Another game that we picked incorrectly. We were struggling on the pick'em last week. Need to redeem ourselves this week. But Bethel goes into Wartburg, Jimmy, 24-14. Royals take this one, and talk about a strong defensive effort and some timely plays here.
Yeah, obviously, you know, forcing 2 interceptions, 9 tackles for loss, and Wartburg also had missed 3 field goals.
Yeah.
Too. So that was just a huge swing. Obviously, you go back, put those points on the board, probably a lot different. But for Bethel, in the quarterfinals for the 6th time in program history, and the 3rd time since 2018. So huge for them. And then a huge touchdown, like right before halftime for Bethel to swing the momentum. And then obviously 2:45 in the first half and only 45 in the second half. So the offense kind of stalled out. But obviously that Wartburg defense, like we talked about last week, is going to come to play, and they did. Some costly mistakes on offense and some special teams, and keeping them away from the win column this week and giving it to Bethel.
Definitely did, and it certainly felt like you talked about it. 2:45 in the first half, 45 in the second. This offense was going. Defense, they picked up and held up their end of the bargain in the second half there. And how about 59-yard interception return for Bethel? Extends their lead to 10 in the fourth quarter. Stops another drive for the Knights and kind of, started to really swing that momentum back in their favor in that second half. Isaac Call, he seals the deal. Another interception at the end of the game, and the Royals are moving on in a pretty unlikely fashion. What a big time win for them to continue their streak. And now you're at the stage of the game where it's like really anyone could beat anybody. All these teams, what we've seen from them in the last couple of rounds, I don't know. Obviously, you kind of have a couple of those underdog type stories. We'll talk about a Mary Hardin Baylor squad in a second that certainly nobody expected to be in this position, maybe outside of the people in that building. But I don't know if there's many true underdog stories left at this phase of the game. You've seen people take on some of the giants in D3 football.
Yeah, and like you said, not a lot of underdog stories left, but it's cool to see what Mary Hardin Baylor's done for sure. We know we're about to talk about them.
Yeah, talk about that game, because Mary Hardin Baylor, man, this game traveling up to Oregon to take on a Linfield squad that was averaging a crap load of points per game. I'll leave it at that. They hold this Linfield team to 18 points. They win 28-18 on the road. You talked about it in kind of our pick'em, their ability to get to the quarterback, and they did that. And they took better care of the football, which is something that I had kind of poked and prodded about earlier. But 28-18 final, from up in Linfield.
Yeah, and Mary Hardin Baylor was 10-point underdogs going into this game, and I picked them to win outright. So shout out to Mary Hardin Baylor for getting my pick 'em right for me after I went 0 for 2 to start here. But pretty big play early on was Linfield drove down in the opening possession, and they got down into the red zone, and they got held to a field goal. And from there, Mary Hardin Baylor just took it and ran, going up 21-3. Obviously, a muffed punt was due, helped that case get to 21-3, but huge momentum shift there, fumbling that punt, and then obviously our boy Durand Hill, man, that kid is an absolute stud.
It's like week in and week out with him too.
Yeah.
There's no off weeks with him, and he's just one piece of that Mary Hardin Baylor defense. I certainly don't want to make it seem like he's a one-man effort on that side of the ball, but he could be. Like, he's one of those guys that has that level of impact on the games. I certainly wanted to highlight that. This is part of the post-game scene from up there in Oregon from the Crusader huddle, so wanted to make sure I showed that and these guys as they some post-game scenes after the victory. But, yeah, I mean, just a ridiculous final, in my opinion, and a great day, a really great day for this crew team in general. Asa Osborne, 17 carries on the ground and finished over 100 yards and a touchdown. You had Jake Wright. They didn't do too much through the air, Jimmy. 8 of 19, 116 yards, had a touchdown, 1 interception on the day. Linfield had a pretty good offensive day, all things considered. I mean, you look at, they outgained the Crusaders 358 yards to 289. And they won in some other key metrics. But at the end of the day, there were some other pieces that were really holding them back. 2 interceptions, that was a big part of it. That was one of the things that held them back from winning this game. They won the time possession battle. And inside of the red zone, Linfield was 3 of 3. So when it came to just coming away with points, now not touchdowns, just points in general. So there was a lot going well for Linfield, but it was timely plays in this one for the Crusaders that ended up getting it done and sealing the deal here.
Yep, and like we said, that's kind of our last underdog. Let's put it in quotes because they're not really an underdog because they've been here so many times. But
that's the thing. It's crazy that they're even like talked about in that breadth, a program at this level, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of what it feels like. But another one that I believe we got royally wrong. Johns Hopkins, they go into DePaul, and this DePaul team, I'm not going to say I've watched them throughout the entire course of the season, but I've certainly tuned into the second half. And you talk about a couple games that stand out, like that Monon Bell game and into the playoffs and what they've been able to do defensively and what they've been able to do at home. I believe this was only their second home loss in the last multiple years for this DePaul team under their current head coach. Johns Hopkins goes in there. They don't care about any of that. 14-9, Blue Jays take this one final.
Yeah, and really slow start in this one. 4 punts in a row to start the game. But following those 4 punts, the Blue Jays put together an 11-play, 80-yard drive to get the 7-0 lead right away. And then obviously, I want to point out, Johns Hopkins tied the program record for its 12th consecutive road victory. And Johns Hopkins has held 11 of its 12 opponents this season under 10 points.
Ridiculous.
It's absurd.
It is.
Or 10 points under its scoring average, excuse me.
Yeah.
Under its, that's still like a wild stat, especially when you have an explosive offense like DePaul come in here, give up 9 points on the road. I mean, just absolutely stellar defensive performance from Johns Hopkins.
Blue Jays reaching the 11-win mark for the 6th time in program history. They did it last year. They do it this year. They've done it multiple times this last decade. And really, that defense, they come up with a stop in the final 2 minutes, seal the win. 7 times in 12 games, man. This is a team that is rolling at the right time. We had talked about how maybe their offense wasn't putting up the same numbers as when compared to a year ago, but I don't know if we consider that maybe other parts of this team continued to get better. Some of the stuff, obviously, on the box score might have changed, but the DNA and the core nucleus of this team is very much still the same. And this is a Johns Hopkins team that is proving a lot of people wrong, which, again, after their season last year and being a 1 seed heading into the playoffs is pretty wild to talk about it in that regard. But you look at James Ranello, 24 of 30 on the day. Very efficient, 296 and a touchdown through the air. Didn't have a ton going on the ground for Johns Hopkins, but E.J. Tallarico, hopefully pronouncing that one correctly, and Cole Crotty, 115 and 114 yards apiece for those two on the receiving end for this Johns Hopkins offense. And when it came to the defense, Jimmy, my goodness, 5 different guys registering sacks on the day, and I had 2 interceptions, of course. Carson Bordeaux, one of the guys we had on the show just a little while ago, took one and brought it back 20 yards on the return, had almost 7 different Blue Jays in the backfield registering tackles for loss. I mean, this was just an across-the-board really good defensive effort for this Johns Hopkins squad, and they're going to need that to continue on this kind of run that they're on right now. But a team that ruined a very impressive run, and one that thankfully I actually did predict correct because I didn't get much right in our pick'em this week. Let's talk about Springfield. They go into upstate New York. They dethrone the defending national champions in Cortland. They do it behind that potent offense in the option, and it really was kind of what you'd expect from the Springfield team. But the fact is they did it against a really quality opponent in Springfield, and they broke a pretty wild record in the process.
Yeah, our boy Arson leading the way for Springfield. 29 carries, 148, and 2 touchdowns. Blaine Hart had a good game as well. 10 for 87 and 2 touchdowns. And Drew Heenan with 11 for 87 and 2 touchdowns as well. This was probably the craziest stat I saw all week, potentially. Jack Winey with 22 tackles for Cortland.
I just
tackles?
read that on there, and I'm literally going to double check that right now because
it's on there. Go look.
Holy shit, it is, and that is outrageous.
22 tackles. I was going because I always go through like a box score, like all this. It's usually like rushing yards or receiving yards, like it's been like all day today. But I got to throw in a defensive stat there. 22 freaking tackles.
That's outrageous. Also at a sack and a forced fumble.
Yeah, I mean, just monster performance for him. Absolutely monster performance.
That is really, really impressive. And that record that I had alluded to earlier, Springfield football, they set the new NCAA Division III record for yards in a season, 5,327 yards on the year for this Pride attack. We saw Harding do it at the D2 level last year, running the flex ball in the option. We see Springfield do it this year at the D3 level. And boy, option football is back, Jimmy. I think it may be back to stay, especially at a couple of these programs. That's only the start of it, though. You look at the second slide of this tweet, they had 8 players rush for over 100 yards this season. You go down the list, Arson, of course, leading the charge there. You talked about Blaine Hart earlier, but continue going down that list. There were so many contributors to this offensive attack for the Springfield team, and they've shown up in really big ways throughout this playoff run. And Arson is obviously the face of that potent offensive attack, but there's a lot of other guys that make this thing go over there for
like
Springfield.
The offensive line. I was about to say the O-line.
That as well, right? I mean, you talk about having 8 guys go for over 100 yards. How about the dudes that make the holes for that? Because that literally is a testament to, like, not to discriminate against these guys, but, like, whoever they throw back there, they're getting yards because these guys are moving bodies up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And the game's won up front. You know, the offensive line is the most important part of the offense. So
that it definitely is. And moving over now, the team that, you know, maybe we didn't talk about too much over the course of the regular season. That was because they were blowing teams out by ridiculous margins, and there were a lot of other really competitive games that maybe we just wanted to cover instead of this. Well, no more excuses, Jimmy. Hope, they go into North Central, and the Cardinals, they take this one 41-21 in admittedly a little bit more of a dominant fashion than I was expecting. This Hope defense, I think, was kind of the talk of this. Oh, North Central isn't going to be able to do this against this Hope defense. Not the fact that Hope was going to go in there and upset them. We both picked the Cardinals to win this one outright and probably to cover. But the fact that they're able to put 41 up on this Hope defense that has shown that they are a really prominent side of the football there for the Flying Dutchman. And, I mean, just talk to me about this one.
So, interesting. It was actually no score in the first quarter, 0-0.
Yeah.
Tied 7-7 late in the second quarter, and then the final 3:26 of the first half, North Central scored twice.
Unreal.
So, and we talk about the middle eight all the time on this show, and it showed tremendously on Saturday for North Central. You know, you can do some damage in that middle eight, you know, shift the whole entire game, and that's what we saw. Outgaining Hope 486 to 334 in this one. So a lot more the second half kind of obviously they took off, like you said. Landon going for 93, and he threw to Skanka 4 times for 119. So Skanka had himself a nice little game. Sacco breaking the 100-yard barrier, 100-yard rushing yards, gaining 120 on 19 carries, past the 1,000-yard barrier for the second straight season. So he had himself a nice game, getting some milestones as well. So.
How about picking off Ben Wellman twice for that Cards defense? Maybe hasn't gotten enough love over the course of this season. North Central, they did that in this one. Jamar Daniel and Robbie Ramarion, and those are 2 big-time plays that Hope is not getting back in this one. And there were some guys on that side of the ball that had good days, but the 2 interceptions for Hope certainly put out a couple of their drives prematurely. And this one, started to get away from hope in the fourth quarter. There was a touchdown at the very end. I'm talking 15 seconds left in the game that made the score look even a little bit closer than it actually was. This was a 41-14 game, Jimmy. This was very far out of reach. And this is really what we've come to expect from this squad. One number that did stand out to me here, the attendance being only 1,491 people.
Yeah, I think the weather was pretty bad at Hope. I know that I saw some videos of them like shoveling the field and everything. So maybe it had to do with the weather. I'm not
At
really
North
sure.
Central in Naperville.
Oh, I thought it was. Excuse me, I thought it was at Hope. I've been
No.
seeing videos of them shoveling the field all week. Maybe it was just for practice.
It definitely was, and
Yeah.
Hope did have a ton of
Yeah,
snow on the
'cause
field
I,
leading
I
up to
didn't-
it. But
I did
this
not,
one,
yeah.
this one was in Naperville. So that number, I was like,
Yeah.
I was kind of,
Yeah,
I don't know what their usual
yeah.
turnout is,
Yeah, it's weird.
but get some people to show up to these games, man.
Yeah.
But absolutely, they are competing at a very good clip. Let's move on. Randolph-Macon, they went on the road to Salisbury. 35-14 Seagulls. They win this one, jumped out to a 28-0 lead early. Oh, my goodness, Jimmy.
Yeah, this one got out of hand pretty quickly, and that's to their strong run game at 6.7 yards a carry. They only completed 5 passes. They haven't had a super strong passing attack all year because they lean on that run game, obviously, and they only had 1 penalty all game. So obviously playing really disciplined football, but they did turn over the ball twice, and Randolph-Macon did not turn the ball over. So just kind of strange how that all panned out. You win by 21, you lose the turnover battle. Like, it's just weird, but obviously coming out with the victory.
Yeah, absolutely. We had talked about, the rushing defense for Randolph-Macon, who was only allowing, I believe, 70 or less yards per game on the ground when it came into this one. Randolph-Macon did not run the ball almost at all in this one, at least not effectively. 31 carries for 14 yards, this Randolph-Macon offense. That is ridiculous. Yeah, that's kind of the face I was expecting. Salisbury on the other side of things, 287 yards on the ground with just 12 more carries. They averaged almost 7 a pop. That hurts.
Yeah.
It definitely hurts. 8 sacks for that Salisbury defense. Did you know about that one?
I did. I did not throw it in the graphic, though. That Salisbury run game is just absurd, dude.
It absolutely is.
6.7 yards a carry is just wild.
And then obviously you get Randolph-Macon, you stuff the run, you get them off schedule, and you get back there and get pressure to the quarterback. That's a recipe for disaster if you're those guys. But final game to cover here, Carnegie Mellon, they go on the road to Mount Union. Purple Raiders take this one, not very handily, 24-19. They come out on top.
Yeah, they had a heck of a game. Wild one here. I did not really expect it to be this close. I said that last week, and I was proven dead wrong, obviously.
Yep.
I thought this was like the one like I thought they were going to cover for sure, but they obviously did not manage to do that. PJ DeShields had a pretty solid game for Mount Union. Joey McGinnis had himself a solid game for Carnegie Mellon as well. The Mount Union defense coming up big late, getting some big stops, and coming out on top. I will say Mount Union has had some kind of scary games throughout the regular season, and this one obviously not being a great game. You thought this might be like a tune-up game, if you will. I mean, I don't want to go as far as saying that, but I expected some more out of them. I don't know. What about you? What do you think about that?
I hear you. I think this Carnegie team, traveled very well and had a lot to prove going into this, right? I think that was a big piece of it for this Carnegie squad. But I guess I'm kind of in that same regard, and recency bias could certainly be a part of that because we saw the way they handled John Carroll last week.
Exactly.
And maybe we just, subliminally we were expecting something of that similar nature. And again, to our point earlier on, you don't just handle teams like that in the playoffs. That game against John Carroll was an anomaly for a reason because those don't happen in the playoffs, right? Those games are not supposed to exist at this time of the football season. So to see a score like this, yeah, I'm with you, and I thought this game maybe we had a little bit larger margin of victory for the Purple Raiders, but they took care of business, and I'm sure the guys in that building could care less what the score is now moving forward.
Yeah, I just got to keep feeding Echeverry, like you said last week. Keep giving the ball to Echeverry.
Yeah, you did. You said feed them, and good things will come when you do that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, you look ahead at this matchup, though. These guys playing Salisbury in a week, and that's where I think things are going to get very interesting. Mount Union's run defense has not been the focal point, I think, this season. They're allowing about 100 per game, and only 3 a pop, but that they haven't played a team like Salisbury. They haven't played a team with that style and that energy and that physicality, I think, when you can talk about this Seagull offense. And so when you're already giving up, you're conceding 100 yards a game there, and now with the fact that you're playing one of the most potent, if not one of the best rushing attack in D3 football, that could spell trouble for Mount Union early. We'll see how they handle that. I think the first quarter of that one will be very telling.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and we'll do a pick'em probably tomorrow. We'll be filming it probably as you're watching this. But that sounds good, dude. Really good football. Thanks for joining me again tonight, Jim.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Excited for some quarterfinals, dude.
Yeah, dude, me too.
See you, brother. All right, time to talk some NAIA football. No Match Wars tonight. You've got me instead, and we also have some really good football games. How about let's start with the defending national champions, Kaiser. They hosted Georgetown, the Tigers. They win this one 38-22. Kaiser continuing their epic streak when it comes to playing some really, really good NAIA football games. And Seahawks were doing it all in this one. Kaiser, they're heading to the program's third straight NAIA football championship series semifinal. They posted 419 yards of total offense. Their offense held the ball for nearly 40 minutes throughout the course of this one. Here you see the first score on the day. Quarterback Shea Spencer got things going on. He set the school record for touchdown passes in a season, registered his 25th touchdown pass in the year at the end of the game. You see him getting the ball out here once again. It was a tie game in the second quarter. Georgetown, typically one of those teams going to control the pace of play, control the time of possession, and keep the ball in their hands. Kaiser, though, not letting them do that. Getting to the outside, scoring again to take a lead here in the second quarter. Defensively, though, I think is where Kaiser stepped up big time. They held the Tigers to 232 yards of total offense, there, including just over 100 passing. It was the second lowest total offensive yards allowed by the Kaiser defense this season. Another touchdown right there gives Kaiser a 2-score lead just before halftime. Kaiser continuing to tack on. Now, Georgetown would add a little bit of their own in the second half, but you see here, Spencer rolling out to his left, throwing across his body down the open part of the field. He was very efficient on the day. Finished with a final stat line, 23 of 31, 239, and 4 touchdowns for the man under center for the Seahawks. There it is right before the halftime. A field goal gives this a 24-7 lead for Kaiser. Georgetown would answer with a touchdown of their own. Doesn't matter. Run game also going very strong for this Kaiser attack. Andrew Burnett led the charge, 25 carries, 95 yards, a touchdown of his own on the day. Shea Spencer added 45 yards on the ground and had a couple receivers with pretty big time games, Spread the ball out quite a bit. Had 3 receivers with 5+ catches apiece. This Kaiser team is about as multidimensional as it gets. They will advance and move on to the next round. A lot of good stuff going on for this Kaiser squad. And like I talked about it earlier, the longest winning streak right now in NAIA football, obviously being the defending national champions, certainly helps in that regard. But that's about it from this Kaiser game. And we can move on to maybe a little bit more of a surprising result. Not in the way of who won the game, but maybe more so in the way of how. And I think that's kind of the best way of summarizing this. Northwestern, they go into Grandview after a massive win last week for the Red Raiders. They go and take on the Vikings. This one certainly going the way of the home team. Grandview, it was their 4th shutout on the season. They win this one 17-0 to advance and pick up the win over Northwestern. And in this one right here, what you'll notice, first of all, nice little opening score for this Grandview Viking attack. But they held the Raiders to just 218 yards of total offense. They did not allow an offensive touchdown. They had 3 turnovers on downs. Their defense was stepping up throughout the entire course of the game, which was a really important piece for this Grandview attack. Jackson Waring here getting it out and dishing it to the outside. Actually, I think I'll just do it myself. Run it in for the score. 17-0 the final, as the Vikings with another strong defensive performance for the squad. They've been doing it all year, and they're certainly not going to stop when it comes to the playoffs. Some post-game comments there that I won't play for you guys from Matt McCarty, the head coach over there at Northwestern. But when you look at the box score here, I mentioned him earlier on. Jackson Warring, 13 to 22, 160 yards through the air. Had a pretty efficient day. Did it really well on the ground, too. You saw 2 of his touchdowns there. Coming on the ground, not through the air. Finished with 47 yards and 2 tuds. Some big-time performances on defense for this Grandview squad. You had forced fumble from Aaron Brown, who also had a sack and a half. Had 3 other guys in the backfield registering sacks. Some big PBUs from that defensive secondary. Devery Jones led them with 7 tackles on the day, also with John Argo. And I think that's kind of the cliff notes from this one. The kind of the statement part of this game, and I had to tune in for a little bit of it, was that Northwestern, I talk about how they didn't have a touchdown on the day. They drove all the way down the field, 71-yard drive for this Northwestern team. But when it got down to it, huge stop on 4th and 1. It was on the 7-yard line. That kept Northwestern off the board. That felt like a really big turning point in this game. Northwestern had the chance to capitalize inside the red zone. Instead, they're stopped by the Vikings. And from there, it was just really all Vikings the rest of the way. But that was really a turning point. And so shout out to that defense for stepping up when it mattered on 4th and 1. We'll keep going here, though. Let's talk about a Benedictine team that goes in and upsets Indiana Wesleyan 20-9, the final. The Ravens win this one on the road. And a big reason why, obviously, road games in the playoffs are tough. But against Indiana Wesleyan, they had a 25-game home winning streak before this game. The Wildcats did. Benedictine snaps that. And also they avenged their 2022 loss at Indiana Wesleyan, which was also an NAIA FCS quarterfinal game. So talk about deja vu. Just 2 years removed, they go back into the stadium and pick up a massive win over this Indiana Wesleyan squad. 17-0 at halftime. The final, 20-9. Benedictine takes it. And this one was interesting, semi-late. Jackson Hoskins, though, he puts the finishing touch on it. He gets an interception with about under 2 minutes to go in the game. That would ice it. The Ravens, they finished the game with over 40 minutes of time of possession. Totally controlled the pace of play of this one, and what was actually a pretty dominant performance that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, including myself. They jumped out to a 17-0 lead. Jackson Dooley ran one in to go up 14-0, and then it was Harry Balke on the field goal out from 20 yards. So at halftime, Indiana Wesleyan scored on the first play of the 4th quarter, but again, kind of stopped the momentum from there on out for the Wildcats. Dooley finished 18 of 33, 193 through the air, had 1 interception. Didn't have too much in the ground game for Benedictine, but through the air, did enough to get it done. It was really the defense. I want to make sure I make that very clear. It was the defense. 3 interceptions on the day. Isaiah Haston, it looks like Cole Johnson, and of course Jackson Hoskins, the one to ice it late in the game there. Those are some of the biggest plays on the day for this Benedictine squad, and the defense was all over the field. Javi Bloomquist and Zachary Lacombe, 11 and 10 tackles respectively, had a lot of guys in the backfield making plays throughout all 4 quarters of this one, and that's a statement win. Any kind of win in this environment is a statement win, but for this Benedictine squad, I don't think it becomes more of a statement win than what they just pulled off there at Indiana Wesleyan. But finally, in our 4th matchup of the day, let's talk about Morningside going into Montana Western, The Bulldogs from Montana Western had just won their first playoff game in a long time, multiple decades, a week ago, trying to keep that success going at home. Morningside says not so fast. 31-24, Morningside. They take this one, and I'll roll some of the tape here as we get in talking about it. There's a look at the scene over there in Montana. Speaking of Montana, this is the first win in the state of Montana for Morningside in their football program's history, which is a statistic that I certainly did not expect to hear on this podcast. The Mustangs were down 24-10 at half. Had some trouble early defensively. You see that long ball there into the end zone. They had committed 2 turnovers in the first 2 quarters. Another touchdown here. Montana Western feeling themselves early on. A couple turnovers from this Morningside Mustang attack. And it really was all Montana Western. Then, though, things would take a turn for the worse, at least if you're a Bulldogs fan. Morningside scores 21 unanswered and claws their way, fights their way back into this one. You see this back corner of the end zone, hauls it in for the score, and they were evening things up pretty quick here. When it comes to the actual box score in this one, Montana Western actually outgained Morningside 486-413, ran almost 20 more plays than the Mustangs, but when it came down to it, it was a couple key turnovers and a couple stops on defense. Morningside able to finish things off, even though they lost the time of possession battle by just about 13 minutes. Zach Chevalier for Morningside, 23 of 35, 347, and 4 touchdowns for the quarterback. Did have 2 interceptions on the day, but it was enough. The offense, they get it done. Defense hangs on in the first half. Offense comes alive in the second. And that was kind of the story of the Mustangs in this one, who get the job done on the road and advance to the semifinals. So, again, cannot be understated. Massive win for this Morningside program. And you talk about the 2 of the GPAC powers and them in Northwestern making it this far in the playoffs. Certainly not a surprise, but to win in this fashion on the road in a really hostile Montana environment, really an impressive feat. So shout out to that Mustang squad. And that will be all for tonight's D1 Rejects episode. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. I've been your host, Kobe Manzo. Please check out the show and tell your friends about the show. How about that? Do me a favor, tell someone about the show and get them tuned in. Otherwise, got some new merch that dropped. This is the old t-shirt, but we got new stuff dropped out. I'm going to plug everything here. Go ahead and check that out. Follow us on all the platforms, and we'll see you next week for some semifinal matchups.